An excellent mic. And now we're live. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Whiskey Crusaders. Today, we've got a special thing. We got Gareth and Scott here for Aberfeldy Day. So Gareth is visiting from New York, so we're really excited to have him here at the house. We've been hanging out here for about a couple hours, drinking some nice whiskeys. And so we decided we'd go live and talk to you guys about Aberfeldy. So let you guys take it away and go from there.
Scott, why didn't you go ahead?
Well, my name's Scott Jenkins, and I'm the single malt ambassador for Bacardi here in North Texas, and representing this fine Scotch in the great state. And Gareth's our national ambassador, so he covers all the markets we have other ambassadors in, and he gets to spend the last few days with me and tonight with me. And we have to do this terrible job of...
Just to be clear, not tonight. We're going to go and hang out in some bars, maybe grab a bite.
That's very fair.
That's the hangout tonight.
That's very fair.
That's what's sorry.
No, the clarification
clarify,
is necessary. We have the pleasure of hanging out with Matt here today, and brought a bunch of Aberfeldy marks to taste and give you guys some insight on. So happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it. I guess you want to tell a little bit about what your job is in general?
So I have quite an incredible job. I get to work with people such as Scott. I work with a team of ambassadors all around North America. So I'm the national North American ambassador for the Bacardi single malts. Aberfeldy is one of 5 single malts that we represent here in the States, but this is the one that we're going to be speaking to you about today. And aside from Scott, who's based in Texas, we've got ambassadors on the West Coast in San Francisco and LA. That's Freddie and Alfie. We've got Jonathan, who's based in DC. We've got Paul, who is in Chicago, Crystal, who works with me in New York. And then we've also got Ian, who's down in Miami. So between this group of individuals, we're responsible, along with the brand team and then the portfolio team and then wider Bacardi and then our distributor side for basically representing and looking after these beautiful Scotch whiskies in North America. So it's a brilliant job. We get to drink whiskey, hang out with cool people, do some pretty dope things. And we're really excited to be here today with you. Again, I think it's the second time I've done something with you. Yeah.
We did Doers last time, was when it was a year and a half ago when you headed up the Doers.
That's right. And Irene was doing the single malts. So before I moved over to the single malts, I was the national ambassador for Doers blended Scotch whiskey. So for almost 5 years now, I've been with Bacardi, specializing in Scotch whiskey. So marginal alcoholic, but definitely I have a love for the liquid that we're going to be talking to you about today. And I think Scott's going to give you a quick recap. For those of you who aren't familiar with Aberfeldy, where it comes from, what it is, and who makes it, I think Scott's going to give you a quick top line as to who we are, what we do, and how we do it.
Yes, right, we have to pour a little bit first so we're not seen as posers.
Very important.
Right.
Say hi to Jimmy Jazz out there and Chris Tats. Good to see you there from Australia.
Yeah.
So I told you guys this would be we didn't know what time it was going to be today. It said it'll be Thursday. So that way I didn't put a posting out there earlier. Just, hey, it'll be sometime today. So this is the time we're having it. And I know it's the middle of the night there for you, Chris. So pretty nice that you're awake. You're working the night shift tonight. Okay.
Middle of the morning.
There you go.
Like.
Fun.
It's a good a time as any to drink whiskey, just not on shift.
No. Fishing, that's really, they would frown upon that since he's a police officer. So it's not to drink on your shift. So... Oh yes, well, they're great to have you guys in here tonight. So let's.
We got a little bit of Aberfeldy 12 year, which is the youngest mark in our core. Aberfeldy's got a really beautiful history. The distillery was opened in 1898, so a long history of making whiskey, but by the sons of John Dewar, Tommy and John Alexander Dewar. They opened this distillery in the village of Aberfeldy, which was just down the road from the village of Dole, where their father was born. So it was kind of a tribute to their father to open this distillery after his passing and carry on the Dewar's family business. But they were incredibly savvy businessmen. And so the logistics of that site was not just to celebrate their father, but it was to start to make this beautiful single malt whiskey. They're kind of one of their first forays into distilling from blending. But at that site was also the location of one of the main ingredients you need to make Scotch whiskey, and that's water. So the famous Batilli Burn was located not far from the village of Aberfeldy, and this water source was famous for being laced with alluvial gold deposits. it's one of the reasons why we're nicknamed the Golden Dram. Historically, people used to come and pan this water for gold. The third main reason they built this distillery in that location was the proximity to the railway. So transportation is incredibly important back in that day to be able to get malted barley in, to get coal and peat in, and to be able to transport the whiskey out. So they were incredibly savvy in making the choice there, and they worked with one of the most famous distillery architects of the day, Charles Doig. And I don't have an example of it here, but if you ever look up the Aberfeldy distillery, and a lot of distilleries in Scotland, you'll see this sort of pyramidal pagoda shape as part of the distiller design that usually resided over the malting floors, which are no longer present in Aberfeldy distillery. But that was a unique design of the distillery to kind of draw the peat smoke up away from the malted barley, because the brothers were looking for this, heavily honeyed, fruit forward, beautiful single malt, and drawing that peat smoke away from the malted barley was really, really important. So yeah, we've been making it ever since, and we have a 12, 16, and 21 in the core portfolio. A really unique single malt, known for this rich honey characteristic that comes from an extended fermentation period, which is a minimum of 72 hours for Aberfeldy. It's longer than average in Scotland. And interrupt me anytime if you have any questions.
That's right. No, yeah. It's just nice to see that. And it's a good thing to have a longer fermentation when it tastes good. As we know with other things, longer is not so great. But this one's a good time. So, and you guys will see in a couple of days why I say that about longer fermentation, but we're not talking about that today. Say hi to Pinch Hitter Whiskey. Jim, if you haven't had Aberfeldy, well, I suggest you reach out and grab some. Even just get the 12 to start with. This is a fantastic whiskey, and I actually use it for old fashions a lot now as well. So don't be afraid to use your single malts to make amazing cocktails either. And I've had some awesome dinners with Scott. We had some great cocktails with the 12. Yeah. So, it's one thing. And there's DJ. It's always nice to have a lunchtime and get a great whiskey stream while we're out here. So, all right, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we do actually to tap on your old fashioned. We do a version called the Gold Fashioned with Aberfeldy 12-year. And we partner with a lot of local beekeepers and apiaries in the different markets to highlight the work that they do with bee conservancy. And we actually run a program called Barrels and Bees, and we feature their local honey in a Gold Fashioned, which is just simply Aberfeldy 12-year, that local honey, a couple dashes of Angostura bitters, and then a nice lemon peel. Makes a really beautiful expression of an old fashioned. We'll talk a little bit more about the Barrels and Bees programming later, since we just did one recently in the lovely Texas heat on Tuesday. It was good. It was good. We sweat a little bit, but
Scott, it's one of the main reasons I was here. We do visits to apiaries and hives with groups of bartenders to help them understand the ecosystems that the bees live within, how important they are to the ecosystems in which we humans live. Honey production, but also understand the sustainability elements and the importance that they have to us. And it was a program, Barrels and Bees. We might as well do it now. Mention that.
Yeah, I don't even know about this, so even better.
So Aberfeldy, we have a global advocacy program. It's called Barrels and Bees. It was founded in 2018 by who was then our global single malt ambassador, an incredible lady called Georgie Bell, who was actually in Dallas with us this week to do the hive visit.
Cool.
And effectively, what it is it's really an educational platform to help people understand the importance of bees within the environments in which we live. But the bee populations globally have been in massive decline over the years for a number of different reasons. And there was a lot of things we realized were important to bartenders. The quality of tinctures and bitters you use, the quality of liquors that you put into the cocktail, the type of ice and glassware that you use. But when we were looking around, and I say we, this is a royal we, I really mean Georgie. When Georgie was looking around to develop this program, she realized that honey was really a secondary consideration for most bartenders. Mm-hmm. If you were to look at the programs, look in the kitchens, look in the pantries, or use what they were using, it was generally store-bought or bought in from a distributor. And that's not necessarily the quality or grade of honey that you would necessarily want. And with honey being so terroir-driven, being so unique, depending on the flora and fauna that the bees are feeding and pollinating, we decided that what we're trying to do is help protect the bee populations that were being maintained the best, and that happened to be with the local beekeepers and apiaries. So what we looked to do was educate bartenders, introduce them to their local beekeepers, apiaries, and hives, and really extol the virtues of using 100% local raw honey. And that's where this Barrel and Bees program came from. So this Tuesday, we got in cars and buses, wrangled up about 13, 14 bartenders from the Dallas area, and took them out to go and meet the guys. Where was it again?
It was up in Salina, Texas. Our great beekeeper Rex Smith, who runs Harmony Hollow Apiary, had us out there with on some land with about 24 hives. It's just a really great experience. It's to get bartenders out there, see them, and to kind of dispel some misconceptions about bees and honey, and to learn how things work. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between, like Gareth mentioned, honey production and preservation of quality, and the parallels with making Scotch whiskey. So we try and tie that together in that kind of programming, and then we do honey tastings of different seasonal honeys from the same land. Pair that up with Aberfeldy and let them see the kind of contrast and parallels between the different seasons and the different marks. It's a really unique experience for them to be able to do that and learn from someone like Rex, who's got a wealth of information. We always learn new things every time we go do it. And so we kind of challenge them to to take this honey back and this information back and build this into their programs alongside Aberfeldy and help showcase these sort of beautiful brands and create beautiful experiences for people in the bar. And it's great. The response we get is really amazing. And it's such important information to convey to people. Having these bartenders who are natural hosts in this industry carry that forth has been really great to see. So it's something we continue. We do 2 apiary visits every year. And then for most of the markets, we'll bring the beekeepers into a space as well with a demo hive if we're lucky, and do an education in the bar. And then we do some consumer tastings, with honey tastings in the on-premise space as well. So it's a really, really cool program. I've learned a tremendous amount with it already.
Like fun, yeah. So I know when we did some stuff, the honey was sent in the mail. We got a broken thing of honey by the lovely postal service back with Irene. We're like, all right, well, this is awesome. So then thankfully 2 saved, but the other one, my whole mailbox was dripping with honey. It was very fun. So, that was entertaining to say the least. But the honey was really good.
Question from Isaiah V. Is the Aberfeldy 18 French wine finish? I've heard good things. It is, my brother. This is
it's fantastic.
This is the last year's release. It's a 3rd iteration in the French red wine cask series from Stephanie McLeod and her team at Aberfeldy. So this was the Côte Rôtie finish. The first one was a 15-year finish up to 6 months in Pomerol casks. And the second iteration was an 18-year finished up to 6 months in Pauillac casks, and this is the Côte Rôtie. So we'll talk about it when we pour it, but we're going to continue that. We have a new release coming this year, which we'll mention a little bit later, alongside some exceptional casks.
That's a 21. Is that one? Or
yes.
I have it over there if we need it.
Oh, the Saint Emilion. That was a special release. I thought it was really, really good, though.
It's really good. We can talk about that later, though.
Yeah. We'll steal from his stash, too.
Yes, of course.
That's true, man.
Jimmy Jazz.
Jimmy Jazz, you're plugged in, sir.
Jimmy, do you work for Bacardi? Just out of interest. So you're almost right. There is one thing there that's not quite as correct, but maybe at the end, what we'll do is we'll talk about the plans for the rest of the malts and how that's going to be fitting in within North America. But I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah. Hang out for a little bit, Jimmy, and you might get a little bit of an insight on that. But yeah, I have a strong suspicion you're an insider somewhere in Bacardi.
Yeah. I don't know. Jimmy Josh has watched for a long time, but I'm not exactly sure what he does for a living. So who knows? We may all get a surprise.
I mean, I think we can hop back a little bit. We've jumped around. I like the free form of this podcast.
Oh yeah, it's whatever. It goes all over the place.
But kind of climbing back to what we have in our glass, I mean, this 12-year is stunning. It's bright and youthful, and at its price point, getting it on the shelf, you just get so much for it. That fermentation period, that extended fermentation period I mentioned earlier, that produces this big rich honey characteristic, that is kept highlighted and pushed to the front of the stage to our 2-stage distillation process. If most people aren't familiar, Scotch whiskey goes through 2 stages. A wash still, which produces what's called low wines. You get sort of a neutral grain spirit that comes out at 20 to 35% ABV, depending on who's making it. And it has to go through a secondary stage, which is the spirit still. And this is really where the flavor selection happens, right? There's a lot of misconception that in distillation, flavor is created in the distillation part of the process. It's really, I think, more selected in that process. And we have large copper pot stills, which plays an important role, but it's a selection of flavor that happens during that distillation period. And that honey characteristic is preserved during that and really put to the forefront. So I think that's something that's worth noting. It's the main characteristic, but we have citrus and vanilla and a lot of oak spice that comes in on the background too. But it's just a really beautiful single malt that at 12 years has got some weight to it. It's a little chewy and waxy kind of honey. It's not just runny and thin. And I really, really love that characteristic at 12 years.
Yeah, there's not many 12-year scotches or 12-year anything that's this kind of viscosity for the proof. I've only been at 40%. It's shocking how viscous this stuff is. And it's probably one of my favorite, especially the fact that it's also approachable price point wise. You can't really go wrong for under $40 to get a really good scotch. Especially if you have never really had a good scotch. It's also a good intro to scotch for a lot of people, I find. They go, I don't like scotch. Well, try this. And they're like, oh, this is actually good. So that's the nice thing, too, about it is you can go, it's not going to break the bank, and you're going to have a good time. And then also don't be afraid to make, like I said, cocktails with it. It's good for everything, so it's quite good. Say goodbye to JD Bourbon Approach. Good to see you in here.
Oh, the 20-year-old, so tan finish. That really was an exceptional bottling of Aberfeldy.
Yeah.
Very limited release, but absolutely delicious.
This is very good.
I mean, that's something really interesting that you just mentioned there, is really the approachability of Scotch.
Absolutely.
Because within the role that we do, it's not just connecting with bartenders and people within the trade. We do a lot of work within consumers as well. And whether we like it or not, within the world of Scotch, there's a huge amount of misconception as to what Scotch is. And the thing that we come up more than almost anything else is that I don't like Scotch because it's smoky.
Yep.
Or it's peaty. And when we talk about Aberfeldy, the real point of our job is to get people to try it, because this is 100% non-peated barley. This is probably one of the more approachable Scotches. I mean, if you're an American whiskey drinker, you like your Irish, you love your Japanese, this really is one of those bottlings within the world of Scotch that will kind of bridge that gap for you, create that segue, almost bring you from, and to pun a phrase, from the darkness into the light. I'm sure there's some people that are going to be mad at me for that. What I mean is with that kind of honeyed central flavor profile. And when we talk about the 12, this is really the flag in the ground. This is the statement. This is us demonstrating what the house style of Aberfeldy is. And it's that honey, that vanilla, and that citrus. But it's eminently approachable. And actually, in the words of Stephanie McLeod, she's the master of malts for Aberfeldy. And in fact, all of our other single malt distilleries. And also, in fact, as if that job wasn't big enough, she's the master blender for Dewar's as well. Now, 4 times IWC, International Whiskey Competition, Master Blender of the Year, having won it in 2019, becoming the first female ever to win that Master Blender Award. And she won it in 2020, 2021. And we found out at I think it was the middle of last week, that she just won it for a 4th time in a row, the first Master Blender ever to have won that competition. In fact, 3 years in a row, and now 4 years in a row. I mean, as though she doesn't have anything else to do, she just keeps winning.
I wonder when she sleeps. That's what I really want to know.
I don't know. She sleeps just fine, apparently. With gold medals surrounding her bed.
That's right. She's got one for each bedpost. It's all good.
She's a lovely human being. I had the pleasure of having dinner with her in New York alongside Gareth, and she's charming and witty. But you could pass her on the street and never knew what an icon she is and what great work she's done for the Scotch whiskey industry. Being only the seventh master blender for the House of Dewar's since its origination is an illustrious role to hold, and she's done a tremendous job with these single malts carrying on this legacy and innovating into new spaces, which is something we'll talk about when we get to these red wine casks and this exceptional casks. I mean, she's a phenomenal individual.
Quite honestly, someone that you would want to narrate the story of your life.
Yeah,
she has a very calming, soothing presence, and for someone who was absolutely at the height of her professional career, one of the nicest people that you could wish to spend time with. But also, most importantly, the reason that we're here talking about these whiskies, because without Stephanie and her team back in Scotland, we wouldn't have this incredible whiskey to be able to share and talk to you guys about.
Yeah, it was amazing. We recently took a trip over there. All of the advocacy team in North America. We went for 8 or 9 days over in Scotland, up in Edinburgh and Glasgow and Highlands and Speyside, visiting a lot of these distilleries. And that opportunity was just one of the best trips I've ever taken in my life, to be able to talk to the people who have a hand in making this whiskey and see the love in their eyes for it and the passion they have, and the excitement they have to share it. I mean, it's one of the fundamental things we do as human beings is to share food and drink with one another. And it's always made better when you have excellent things to drink. So they're excited to be able to share this with us. And we got to tour 4 of our 5 single malt distilleries, which were the Aberfeldy, Craigellachie, the Altmore, and Royal Brocla. And wonderful team over there.
We also did some competitive stuff as
we
well.
Did.
So I had the opportunity to take the team to see, where did we go? Macallan,
Balvenie,
Glenfiddich, Balvenie,
Dalwhinnie. Kilvinny technically was sandwiched in with Balvenie and Glenfiddich, but Dalwhinnie and I think that's it.
And we canoed the River Spey.
We canoed the River Spey. We fell into the River Spey. We left shoes in the River Spey, and I think
it was baptism in the River Spey.
Yeah,
it's not
it was.
The way it was. Some people went in more than others. Hello, Johnny Shivers.
Shout out to Johnny, who basically walked a quarter mile on the bottom of the River Spey. Fell in so many times. It was cold. There's a shoe near the Macallan distiller that if you ever see a shoe malt,
we'll send you the address, and Jonathan would
address.
Definitely appreciate it back. So
it was cold.
I wouldn't know. I didn't go in.
Yeah, well, lucky you. It was very cold, but it was a unique experience.
Why were you so bad at canoeing on the river is what I want to know.
Well, apparently, according to the tour guide, which is Spirit of the Spey, and we use these guys a lot for advocacy, and the distillery use them a lot. There's maybe been one person that's gone in on a handful of trips at most. But yet on this trip, I think the majority of the canoes for our advocacy team managed to find themselves capsized in the water. So I just think it was a special day. It was a day to go for a swim. Was that not the case?
It was an unplanned swim, but and the worst part was when I fell in with our global ambassador. It was on the slowest part of the river. It wasn't even the rapids. We got caught by an eddy, and instead of leaning into it, we counterintuitively leaned away from it, and there we were, shocked to the system. Took me a good 15 seconds to catch my breath, but it was fun nonetheless. You finish the canoe trip and you warm up pretty quickly when you get to crack a bottle of 31-year-old Craigellachie under this beautiful stone bridge. Yeah.
That didn't sound
There was maybe a handful of bottles of that stuff left.
Awesome. Yeah,
2017's world best single malt whiskey sold out pretty quickly after that announcement.
Nice.
But we do have some stashed away, and that was the dram to warm everyone's hearts and souls after the canoeing expedition.
Yeah.
That it did.
All right, we have a couple questions up here.
From
our buddy Eric over at Mirage, and it says,
hey, Eric.
As it's currently, but wonder if there's any plans for a special run of Aberfeldy 12 at 46% and non-chill filtered.
Can't speak to that. That'd be pure speculation on our part. as much as we get insights on these beautiful single malts, we do not have privy to the inner workings of the blending team over there. But I've not heard any plans for anything like that at all.
There may be things close that might come up
Yeah.
within the innovation, either the exceptional cask or possibly the limited edition series. But it's probably going to be a slightly higher age statement, may hit 46%, which would mean non-chill filtered. But you just have to wait and see. We've got some cool stuff coming out later this year. But specifically for the 12 at that 46, there's nothing that I'm aware of that we have planned. But you never know, that might change.
Yeah, one can always hope.
That's right. And like Eric says, today's Aberfeldy Day. We have our Aberfeldy tree, and we decorated it with whiskey. It was beautiful.
Wait, is that true? You have an
Oh.
Aberfeldy tree?
This is it, right?
Oh, okay.
It's a tree.
Yeah, it is.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
It works. All right, you can just scroll down on the
Mm.
There we go.
Okay. Till midnight last night, wrapping Aberfeldy Day presents.
Aberfeldy claws. I love
Yeah.
it.
That's right. Everybody gets a bottle of great whiskey for the morning. It seems like a really good day to celebrate. I mean,
We should make that a thing.
Totally.
I'm not mad at that.
no, I think it's
I've got the young
good choice.
the young Santa look down. So
Just grow the beard out a bit. We'll get you a hand
Yeah.
bobble. You're good.
yeah, I can
I
do.
know what next year you're going to be doing. He's going to be out at the same time. He's got Santa suit out there roasting in a freaking red suit.
Yeah, yeah. Let's
Speaking of
host.
suit,
Let's host it in.
There was a bee mentioned earlier about something, a suit and a bee.
There was. I mean, when we went to the hives on Tuesday, it was, I'll say it was toasty. It was probably up in around
Yeah.
about the hundreds.
I would say so.
And we were all dressed fully head to toe in the protective bee kit.
Oh, jeez.
And even though we were only out in the open for a very short period of time, it was
Roasted.
really enough to absolutely roast you. But it was
Yeah.
absolutely worth it. Kept the bees docile though, which was nice. No one got stung.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could have gotten away without the suits at all. They were incredibly docile.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching them too. Like that, most people are afraid of them, but they're so important. Even pollinators in general are so important to it. Like our food source, I think like 1/3 of the food in our grocery stores is made possible by pollinators, which was a fact I never knew before doing this program, and other little things about how they communicate. That's the most fascinating part to me, is how they communicate.
The wiggle dance.
The waggle dance, the wiggle dance. Yeah. They actually can communicate position of the sun and distance from the hive and direction from the hive as to where food sources are for specific times during the day, because not all of the local wildflowers are producing nectar all day. So they can communicate that.
That's wild.
But also their function within a hive as well. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
highly effective operational unit. Everyone has a task. Everyone has a job
From the minute they're born.
from
They
the
have a
minute
task.
they're born,
Yeah.
literally.
They
From
just
when they're
start flying
hatched.
off and doing whatever they're
No, they don't
supposed to do.
fly for actually, but I think he said
Couple of weeks.
28 days or something was
Oh, okay.
for the
Interesting.
worker bees. They start by clearing debris from the hive. And then they go to feeding larvae so they can develop into pupae, and then they guard the hives.
Okay.
So they can tell, bees that don't belong to that hive by pheromones, and they'll attack them, or creatures other insects that are not supposed to be near that hive.
Okay.
And they do that all before they ever fly and go forage for food. It's pretty amazing.
That is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Eric wants to know, where does the name Aberfeldy come from?
So it's actually the name of the village, but it comes from the old Gaelic, which I would probably butcher if I. It's impossible to read, but the name in old Gaelic means like mouth of the river king. What was the name of the spirits?
The sprites.
Yeah, the sprites.
But they're not sprites. And I don't know why I'm blanking on this. There's a very specific term for them.
Yeah, it'll come to me. The Gaelic name, but it refers to the king of they're basically water spirits that live alongside the riverbanks and protect the river. But there's the king of those spirits, and his name refers to Aberfeldy. And it's just been kind of corrupted over time as it's been anglicized. and the village is actually named after that as well. So that's the short answer of there.
And Eric Waite absolutely nailed it on the head. I mean, the distillery, but also the village of Aberfeldy, sits almost on top of the banks of the River Tay, which is Scotland's longest river, which empties into Loch Tay. And I mean, it's in Perthshire, which really is the gateway to the Highlands, making Aberfeldy a Highland single malt Scotch. It truly is picture perfect. It's one of the prettiest distilleries that exists, certainly from what I've seen within Scotland. But I mean, it's just rolling hills, trees, and vegetation. You're sitting on this incredible water source, and then the Pathilly burn is just at the back of the distillery.
I mean, I wouldn't call them hills even. I mean, they're almost mountains. I mean, but they're just rife with green color and flowers all around. I mean, Scotland, as you know, gets a lot of rain and moisture. And we were there. We had beautiful weather, and everything was just a stunning green. It really is a magical place, and we had the unfortunate experience of having to, on our first morning, drink some of the best hot toddies I've ever had in my life, with new make Aberfeldy spirit, right at the banks of the Pathilly Burn, with a bunch of really wonderful people. Gary the Grain Man Ross, follow him on Instagram, makes the best hot toddies you'll ever have in your life. It was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it was always amazing to be able to take a team out to Scotland, and the team that just went, it was the newest single malt team that we've had in North America. But for a lot of people, it was the first time they've been out there. I think the most fun for me was watching the faces and the reactions to various members of the team as they were going through Scotland. And look, I've just noticed Eric just said the 16 and the 18 are hard to find. Yeah. Not so much the 18, as it's a limited release. Depending on your market, there may be availability in certain retailers, depending on where you are in the country. But there is some still out there of the Poliak in a very limited edition, which was the 20. What was that? The 2020 release.
Yeah.
And the Coat Roti, which was last year's release. The 16, of course, global logistics and supply. There have been issues getting the whiskey into the country, but we do have a significant amount that's recently touched down off a boat and will be coming back into market very soon. So keep an eye out, because we should be good from this point in time onwards. But talking about the 16.
Yeah, it's what we have in our glass.
So what makes the 16 special?
It's one of my, I love all of them. And it's sort of an unfair pick to, when you taste them side by side, people usually gravitate towards one or the other. But 16 really is a sweet spot for me in the core range, just because it has some of the youth and vibrancy and that big rich honey characteristic of the 12-year, but it gives a little bit of a nod to what's coming in the 21 as it stays in barrel longer.
But Scott, there's one significant difference.
There is
16 that doesn't exist in the rest of the core range.
That's what I was just about to get to. Is the 16 is a finished whiskey technically. Sees a combination of first fill American oak, rechar and refill barrels, but finishing period of up to 6 months in Oloroso sherry cask, which makes it stand out separately from the 21 and the 16. And I think it just adds a depth of flavor to this whiskey, rounds it out and gives this beautiful kind of dried fruitcake and ginger and chocolatey notes for me in the bottom on the back end. But just this wonderful dynamic texture. It's round and chewy, and it's got a really, really beautiful long finish to it. So it's pretty special. And as Eric pointed out, the 16 is hard to find. People love it. I mean, they buy it. They make it hard for me to find bottles sometimes, which I'm not mad about. But it's a fantastic whiskey.
It's quite good. I thoroughly enjoy it. No doubt about it. I love all of them, but this one, I like the finish on it. It's just quite nice. Each something different. Of course, then there's also the travel retail version of this, which is the Madeira finish. Everybody have a chance to find that one. Also pick that up. It's also delicious.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we got lucky. Pete got a bottle a few years ago that we tried of that and was very lucky to have tried it. We call it the Football of Everfeldie because it really looks like a football. It's just a funny shaped bottle. It's a liter, so it's just
it's a 1 liter. It's hefty.
It's a funny bottle.
It does feel somewhat different in the hand.
It does,
especially if you're used to just handling the 750s. That 1 liter is a little bit more significant. But I mean, we do have some phenomenal releases in GTR, or the global travel retail environment. So basically, duty free if you're traveling. And that is one of the current ones. And there's a few special surprises out there, but it all depends on what country you're in and what region you're in and what airports you're traveling through as well.
16's the more ubiquitous. There's a 21-year Madeira cask finish.
Ooh, I didn't know that existed. Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
I have some at the house, and I'll bring that over next time.
Sounds like a plan. And yes, Eric, that is the wine we said yes, and we actually got to have an amazing dinner with Scott last year with it. It was awesome.
That was
fun. Some of
fun.
the wine from it. One of my favorite dinners of all time. So yes, it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was important to do that. I mean, for the launch of the co-roti, we had a dinner experience, and we partnered with accounts in different markets, and we had myself and a bunch of guests come in, and we did a tasting of the 12, 16, 21 that led up to the 18-year co-roti, and paired with some advanced sommeliers in different markets that helped showcase wines from the co-roti region, just so that we can kind of have an understanding of what impact those red wine casks had to embellish this 18-year-old single malt. And it was a really cool experience.
Well, you say that, but Aberfeldy is the base for Dewar's, that's one of the most important reasons Aberfeldy exists was, for the Dewar's blend back in 1897, I guess is when that came out, 1998, whatever that was, when they started using it for Dewar's. So they definitely use it in blends, but does anybody else use it in blends, or just you guys use it for Dewar's?
I mean, who has Aberfeldy in their warehouses? I couldn't possibly say.
Sure.
And where it currently goes at the moment, the majority of the run, just based on its burgeoning popularity across multiple markets, including in North America, it'd be Stephanie and the team who would have a true understanding of whether they were either trading or switching. But just wanted to get back to a point. When you said it's the base for the Dewar's blend, it's effectively the heart and soul of the flavor profile in terms of characteristic. So that's not to say there's more Aberfeldy in a Dewar's blend than there is anything else, because Dewar's is a combination of 40 grain malts, but it's more representative of that house style of Dewar's, which, if you would describe Dewar's, it's probably barrel-aged orchard fruits drizzled in honey. Yes. But within that respect, Aberfeldy is also very much in its own right a single malt distillery.
Absolutely.
In terms of not only the liquid that's produced now, but then also the innovation marks that come across as well. But we do share that incredible talent that is Stephanie McLeod, who really drives that.
Because that's basically why Aberfeldy came out, that was for Dewar's, right? Was to have single malt available for it, essentially, at the time.
It was really to control historically for John Alexander and Tommy to control more of that supply chain.
Okay.
I mean, there'd previously been a distillery that was under contract to produce liquid for them, but this was really their first foray into owning an operational distillery and controlling the entirety of that supply line.
Makes sense.
And that whiskey historically would then follow down those train tracks and end up in the blending rooms in North and Lanarkshire.
Which is brilliant, where they put it.
But it's a very similar story to the majority of the big blending houses.
Yeah, I've noticed that. That seems to be kind of the way it goes. It's like, we need to make sure consistently good quality single malt to go into our blends. And if you control the distillery and own it, it makes it a lot easier.
100%.
Sure.
And then over the years, acquisitions. But then again, I mean, the malts now, if you look at the construct, it's 40 different components.
Oh, yeah, which I still...
Between grain and malt whiskey.
It blows my mind how you get 40 go, I want to make this amazing product. I don't know how the heck she does that. Like, it's truly a magical... How you take 40 components and consistently make the same whiskey over and over and over. I'll never know how she does that.
I mean, it's all about the replication and protecting that house style.
Right.
Because when you drink a whiskey, you need to know that it's that company that's made that whiskey. So in the case of Dewar's, for each and every Dewar's bottling, each and every time you go back, whether it's blended today, it was a month ago, or in a month's time, it needs to be consistent to a level where to the lay people, which is effectively us, we'd never know the difference.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like Aberfeldy as well. There is that house style. There needs to be those recognizable qualities. And that's really where that 12 comes in, because that's showing the foundation, the cornerstone. I mean, it's an incredible liquid in its own right, but it's that flavor profile that each age statement and then each limited release will then build off.
Because how long has Aberfeldy itself been available as a single malt in the States at this point in time?
In the States, well, all the malts were released, I think it was around about 2015.
It's only been a short period of time.
So in the States, it's very, very recent. So it was all of the single malts. So Aberfeldy, Old Malt, Craigellachie, Devron, and Royal Brackla. And back then it was launched under the guise of the lost or the last great malts of Scotland.
Right.
And so that was the introduction point for all of these. And, they've all been there. Some, there's been a significantly larger push based on allocation and supplies. Others, not so much. They've, really become like a handshake within the whiskey drinker circles. I mean, if you have a look at the Devron and Altmore, much lesser known, but very highly regarded. But, it's a situation, if you know those whiskeys, then you know your whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas Aberfeldy has really been the one that came charging out of the gate and is currently one of the fastest growing single malt Scotch whiskies in North America right now.
Yeah.
But then Craigellachie as well. We've got some very interesting stuff happening with Craigellachie coming up at the end of the year. I mean, the one thing Stephanie does is innovate. And it really started with this 16-year-old here. A lot of the innovation, in fact, all of the innovation within the Aberfeldy range is all about the understanding of the influence of a finishing cask on that house style of Aberfeldy at significant age statements, and then also playing around with the ABVs a little bit as well, as we'll find out when we go through.
Yeah, we had a statement from Eric saying, too bad it's 40% and 43 would be better. Whatever you like to drink. I mean, the innovation red wine cask series and the exceptional cask tend to be at 43%. And they are really good, but it's really what Stephanie and her team think highlights the whiskey the best. And for the 12, 16, and 21, that's at 40%. There's just a lot of complexity in there that happens at 40% that they're very happy with. That's not, I have a single cask Aberfeldy that I got to hand fill from the distillery, and that's 55%, and it's beautiful. It's super unique, but it's not as approachable as Aberfeldy. I mean, for someone like myself, Gareth, Matt, we love that, right? The characteristics are wonderful, and the characteristics are there, but it wouldn't be as approachable. So, I definitely trust everybody to know what they like to drink, but Stephanie McLeod and her team, they know very much what they're doing about making this whiskey approachable for anyone.
And Eric wants to know, do you guys do tours of the Aberfeldy distillery?
Yes, we do.
They will.
So the Aberfeldy distillery, of course, the distillery here, but also the home of doers, we have an award-winning visitor centre there. So if you ever find yourself in and around Aberfeldy, you can go and visit the centre. You don't even need an appointment. You can drive up. But if you're a friend of a friend, then give us a heads up. We can let the distillery team know that you're coming through. Maybe try and do something a little bit more special. But it's an absolutely fascinating tour. It's effectively, we have the whole history of the company. We have an archive there as well with a lot of historical documentation.
Oh, that was cool.
And then you can physically tour the working distillery as well. But then we also have a full tasting room at the back, and there's a little cafe and stuff. And, on some of the tours as well, they'll take you out to the back for a hot toddy. By the Caerphilly Burn as well, but I mean, it really is a beautiful.
Yeah, he goes to Scotland frequently, so I think so. He's definitely needs to.
You should go.
Tour when he comes over there.
You should go. Currently, none of the other distilleries have tasting rooms or tours open to the public. So at Aberfeldy, you can buy some limited release bottles from the other distilleries like Royal Brockla and Craigellachie, and even some of the Dewar's marks. So it's definitely worth a visit. I spent a good chunk of change picking up some bottles and bringing them home, and I don't regret it at all because they're fantastic. And you just, you'll never see them again. So it's something that you have to do. So save some pennies and buy some bottles over there.
It's a solid choice. All right, then. JD Bourbon Approach wants to know is, I do like Aberfeldy with a high ABV. Any future releases over 55%. I had Aberfeldy 2001, 57.9%, and it was great.
Yeah, I've seen that. There's some whiskey auction sites that you can keep tabs on. There's some older releases, European releases from the distillery that might be higher ABV or cask strength. But yeah, that's not a common thing. But they're again, I said it earlier, they are stunning and delicious, but they're unique. And so you have to seek those things out and really know what you're looking for. But I would agree with you. It's delicious.
It is, like that 18-year, that was 55.3. I think that one was. That was the 18-year. The sherry cask, that's 9.9. That's that dark one.
The exceptional cask, the 18-year. No, it wasn't that high. I don't remember. You've got the bottle over there. I didn't think it was that high.
We'll solve this problem.
It's delicious. It looks like motor oil in color compared to the next of these. I mean, it's super, super dark, but really, really good.
There was a 24 exceptional cask that came in just above 50% as well.
Yeah.
But that was
3.8.
Yeah, okay.
I knew it was a higher one.
Yeah, I knew that the 24 was higher one.
Yeah, this is the one that's
Yeah.
We'll showcase
certainly dark.
I mean, yeah, so we'll put this next to even the 21.
That's not good.
It's a very significant difference.
This is fantastic too. This is such a deep, deep, deep flavor profile.
Where did you get that one from?
Total Wine. I got it on the concierge services one. Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah,
I have a bottle and a half at home too.
Then I nursed them because I'm like, I can't get this again. So it's
Yeah.
and they're so good. Everyone's like, interest, yes, buy. So this time I got smart and bought 2 of the 21. So smart.
I mean, the color is just visually striking. When you see it in person, it's just so dark. It's almost as though it's pulling light in from the atmosphere around it. In the best possible way.
Like a black hole of single
you
malt.
can't see through it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
278 of 572, so pretty limited run. This is really good stuff.
Absolutely.
You should come over. You should ask Matt for a sample.
You should probably do a competition or something where you send someone some samples of your whiskey.
There you go. Oh, we do occasionally. We've never given that one away, but we could always make an exception at some point in time for that one.
Exceptions for exceptional casks. Yes.
Exactly. Let's see here.
What's up next? 21?
I think so.
Sounds like I finished the 16. Darn, I had to finish really good whiskey. It was just terrible how to do that.
Yeah.
Horrible things they made me drink over here.
I know, it's a terrible Thursday,
It
right?
really is.
I mean, of all the things we had to do to twist your arm.
Yeah, it's awful.
Gareth, what do you want to talk a little bit about 21? Because when I first got this role, listening to Gareth talk about whiskey was super, super engaging for me. But there's a characteristic about the 21 that you described so beautifully, the Marcona almonds, that I think...
Macadamia nuts.
Is it macadamia nuts? See, I say Marcona almonds because they have a similar
I've heard that before,
texture. They kind of melt in your mouth a little bit, and there's a creaminess to them that I think is just beautiful. That's found on this 21 year.
And I think that's really interesting because we'll come to that flavor descriptor in a minute, but I think that's more of an evocative descriptor than it is an actual description of something that you're going to actually taste.
Yeah.
I mean, the 21 is the final within the core range. So when we talk about Aberfeldy, we've got 3 marks of whiskey in what we call the core range, which is the 12, the 16, which is the Oloroso finisher, and then the 21.
Mm-hmm.
So when we move up to the 21, aged a minimum of 21 years, as with all of the other Aberfeldy whiskies, it's in a combination of ex-American and European, so bourbon and sherry casks, and then brought back together. But the 21 isn't finished. It's just straight maturated for a minimum of 21 years. But there's some real magic that happens with this 21-year-old. It retains that Aberfeldy house style of the honey, the vanilla, and the citrus. But the honey, it becomes a little bit more delicate. It becomes what Stephanie and the team in Scotland like to describe as a heather honey. A little bit more floral, slightly less pronounced, almost muted, but not so it's completely gone. It's still very present, but just in a slightly lesser way. But you get these beautiful notes of toasted coconut. And then one of my favorite descriptors is macadamia nut. Or what was the one that you used?
Marcona almonds.
Almonds.
You know, the very pale almonds that are slightly salted and they melt in your mouth a lot like macadamia nuts.
And I think the reason that descriptor is there is because if you think about chewing on a macadamia nut, it kind of slowly breaks down and develops this beautiful silken, very creamy-like texture that just coats the inside of your mouth. There's no real distinctive flavor with it, but it's more evocative of the way the whiskey feels when you drink it. And what the 21-year-old has in spades, and this is what I love, and this is really, for me, how you can identify a really well-aged whiskey, is it has a tendency just to coat the inside of your mouth and just, for me, line the jowls just at the back of the tongue and where you're kind of, the back of your jaw mounts your neck. And then there's just this beautiful lingering finish. It's like waves on a beach. it just keeps coming and coming and coming, and then slowly dissipates. But it holds for such an extraordinary amount of time. But I mean, honestly, the 21-year-old, and I understand I work for Aberfeldy and Bacardi, and you may think I get paid to say this, which I do, but I 100% stand behind this statement. It's one of the, and I would personally stand this 21-year-old Scotch up against almost anything else out there in and around this age statement. I mean, it truly is a fantastic and Moorish, delectable, and approachable 21-year-old Scotch.
Yeah, I think each time I go back and taste it, I pick out something. There's a lot of the fruit that comes out for me on this one. Yeah, it's a stunning Scotch. You get more of the barrel characteristic too, and the physicality of this Scotch. It's a little bit more tannic on my palate. So when Gareth's talking about hitting you in the side of the jowls, like it's a huge, big whiskey that just keeps going and going and going. I love it.
Eric says thanks. So we moved the bottles and made it better. So thanks.
Oh yeah,
Appreciate it.
I help out your OCD there, buddy.
Oh, I've only just started. I wondered why you were moving the bottles.
Yeah, I thought about just letting it sit a little bit longer, but
have you done it? Oh, that is the 18, isn't it?
Yeah, I've put them in order for Eric. So
I'll leave them in order for Eric. It would seem
there you go. So what's fun for daytimes, we get a lot of our fans that are overseas. We got guys in Australia and people in Poland and other fun things here. So another good question here from Bourbon, where he says, what would be the most approachable available release for a bourbon drinker wanting to try Aberfeldy?
Well, I think that, the 12-year for sure.
That's what I would say, the 12.
You start off there. I mean, I always like to tell people who are adamant American whiskey drinkers is that there's a difference, and this might be a little bit of a divisive opinion, but there's a difference in the mentality of American whiskey drinkers and Scotch drinkers. And for me, what I love about Scotch whiskey is that it requires you to be a little more patient, right? You don't get everything right away. It's a bit of a journey. You get to sit with the dram, you smell it, you taste it, you chew on it a little bit, and then you go for another sip. And it builds this beautiful evocative experience where in most cases for me, the American bourbons and ryes are kind of immediate gratification. I mean, they're big, they're bold, they hit you right on the palate. And then they, not all, it's a general statement, not all, but some, they kind of fade a little bit quickly. And for me, the longer that I've done this, the more I want to be present with what's in the glass. And so I don't mind doing a little bit of the work. But that's not to say that you don't get immediate satisfaction with some of these too. I mean, the first time I ever tasted Aberfeldy, long before I had this role, you just recognize that it's something of exceptional quality and it's going to be delicious to drink. So I think the 12-year is a really good place to start, both in practical terms for the price and availability to find it, but just for the beautiful flavor profile. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to get people into drinking whiskey in general, but then bridging back from bourbons and ryes into the single malt category. Start them with that, for sure.
All right, we got a few more questions here. So we've got is Eric from Mirage wants to know, are the older Craigellachie stocks being restocked in the United States as well?
Are they being
restocked?
Restocked.
As I guess we were talking about earlier that you find some Craigellachie at this point.
Yeah.
So Craigellachie is historically the core with Craigellachie was we had the 13, the 17, and the 23.
Mm-hmm.
The 23 is no longer currently available within the US.
Okay.
And it hopefully will be coming back, but there is no definitive date on when that may be. And that was just because that particular bottling became so popular that we pretty much sold out of all the stocks in the US in a relatively short period of time. The 17 is still available. The 13 is available. And we also have a new innovation within Craigellachie that's going to be coming out in August in most markets.
So excited.
Super exciting.
Which what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we'll let you know what that is at the end of the session. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really exciting to have Craigellachie release something new again after so many years, because everything else that came out after the initial core was at a significant age statement. We had the 31, there was then the 33, there was then a couple of limited editions and releases as well, all of which are pretty much gone. You might be able to find a 33 sitting on a liquor shelf if you're very, very lucky somewhere in the US.
Some of my unicorns I really want to try.
Absolutely.
The 23?
The 33. I have a 20, right? The 33, I've never tried. I want to try.
Well,
it so bad.
lucky for Matt, if he attends my Kregeliki dinner,
I will
he
definitely be
might, not promising, might get the opportunity.
Okay.
I don't know, but maybe. But I don't know.
We will be there for sure.
Maybe. Yeah, it's
Aberfeldy peated. No, I don't think that. I don't see an Aberfeldy peated coming on. Don't think that's on the list, guys. Pretty confident.
it's not part of the house style at all.
No.
So
Not at all.
never say never, but
Remember, you got to give that ball back to Sarah.
yeah. What? No, I don't actually. She's gonna be enjoying a lot of tealing. There was another question earlier back I saw.
And Donald, yes, it is the 18-year. Don't worry, the 18 years.
Let me guess. Aberfeldy peated.
Yes.
Eric. 100% non-peated.
Yeah. No, I think he was referring to the special release that we were talking about.
all right, okay.
But that we're mentioning a Kregeliki. That's the
Oh,
new
that's what
Kregeliki.
it is.
That's
The Polyak cask, the 18-year. Yes, that's totally worth 180 Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
That's totally worth that.
Oh,
Because we paid more than that here in the States, for sure. That's totally worth it.
Yeah,
That's actually a really good price.
I mean,
you should buy that.
Again,
It'll make your life better.
I'm unbiased opinion, even though I do work for them. Anytime you can come across any of these limited releases or exceptional casks, if you have the spare dollars to pick it up, you should. They're phenomenal, and they're worth holding on to, and they're worth sharing with the right people when they come over to your house.
Well, buy two. One to drink.
Yeah,
one to keep.
yeah, definitely,
That's
if
the
you can.
solution.
Because, like, for example, like, we're not there yet, but when this 24 year came out, I could only get my hands on one bottle. I mean, it was such a limited release and such a special whiskey that it was hard for me to even find one.
A lot of it as well, depending on where you are, will depend on market allocation as well. So some markets may get more bottles than other markets, and then depending on the collectors and who's within that market and who's looking for those bottles as well. So they can go like that, or they can be around a little bit longer. But to the best of my knowledge, in New York, I have not seen this anywhere
one
on
of
the
the
shelves.
best suggestions, if you guys are not part of Total Wine's concierge services, I would suggest you sign up. It's a good way to get these bottles. That's the only way I know to ever get them. It's because of the concierge service. Now, you'll wait. Could be 6-8 months before you see it, but totally worth the wait. I've been yet to be disappointed about one yet, and I've had several of the exceptional casks now.
Eric Waite Whiskey Studies says the second guess, the special release is Aberfeldy and Lalique decanters for $4,000.
Well,
Probably not, but
it's not really a Stephanie thing.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
It's Stephanie's approach to whiskeys. It's about the approachability of whiskey. Whiskey should be drunk. It should be shared with people. To put that into context, we had a 51-year-old Kregeliki that was released. I think it was 4, maybe 5 years ago. It was 51 bottles of 51-year-old Kregeliki whiskey. It was never sold. It was given away globally for free. So effectively, there was a lottery system for major cities within our global markets that was run, and it gave you the opportunity, if you were to submit an entry, to meet and sit down with either Stephanie or Georgie and share a dram of 51-year-old whiskey with them.
It's really cool.
Because otherwise, it would have literally had to have been put in a Lalique or some kind of crystal decanter that would have cost a fortune. With only 51 bottles, it would have gone straight onto the auction circuit. It would have been sold, and it would be sitting in some collector's dusty safe or on a shelf somewhere, and it never would have been drunk. And that's really
sad.
Not what Stephanie or these distilleries is about.
I was really impressed you guys just did that. That was a really cool way to handle a really old, unique whiskey that Dorgan would never, ever get to try.
I mean, you look at other competitive distilleries.
Just put something insane out, like you said, and it sits on some guy's shelf and they'll never open it.
Well, the proof to the point is, when we were over there in Scotland visiting, we did the distillery tour, and we did a Highland safari up in these crazy, I don't know exactly, there were like army vehicles or something, and we trucked all the way up into the hills and saw lots of goats and rough terrain and beautiful beautiful forests, and then we park overlooking this ravine with the village of Aberfeldy down beneath us, and Gary, who's the distillery ambassador, excellent human being, pulls out a bottle of 40-year-old Aberfeldy and cracks it for all of us to pour. They didn't have to do that.
That's really awesome.
There's no. I mean, those bottles could easily be sold, but they didn't. They pulled it out and they poured it for all of us to share, and that was just an incredible memory that I'll never forget. And the juice happens to be excellent as well. So, that's something that aligns with my values. Like Stephanie wants good whiskey to be shared between good people. So for all of our marks, I think it's pretty affordable for what we offer them.
Okay, so Bourbon says you can get the $250 for the 23, which I think is very fair price, and $3,000 for the 33. Is that, I don't know, I've never seen a 33. Is that about right?
That's about right.
$250 for the 23 is
Yeah,
a great price.
That's a great answer. That you should buy that.
Yeah, you should buy that.
That's a fantastical tropical fruit.
And that's a very fair price on the 33 as well.
Yeah.
I'd say that's about market rate. I'm not going to say it's a great price. I'm not going to say it's over the top, but it's probably right about what it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, $3,000 is about right. If you find it sub $3,000 and you got the change to buy it, buy it. It's a beautiful dram. Do we have? Okay, we're not going to answer that. We're not going to answer that one.
No. JD, we'll get to that one in a minute.
Yeah.
Was JD the guy
actually just
was asking about the
found the 33 for 2,200 and another store under? Yeah, if you can find the 33 for 2,200,
that's a solid deal.
That's a great deal.
That's a win right there.
Okay. So that's probably less than what the retailer paid for it.
We might get a group together for that one because I can't do that on my own, but we might get a group for that bottle for that price for sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask some people.
Yeah, I'm drinking this. Did I pour some of this 18 for you?
Yes.
Are we back in order though?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, that's the 18.
Yeah, so we're enjoying this 18 year. Like we mentioned earlier, this is the third iteration in the red wine cask series that is coming from Aberfeldy. The 15 year was the first iteration in Pomerol casks. I think it was 2019. 2020 was an 18 year in Polyac casks, and then last year the 18 year in Côte Rôtie. Finished up to 6 months in Côte Rôtie casks that are really rare casks. And so when Stephanie and her team got the opportunity to take these casks on, they snatched them up really quickly. And they knows every cask that comes into the site. So, checking for quality and characteristics that will embellish the qualities of Aberfeldy. This release was met with really, really high regards. I want to say 98 points. I
think it was 97.
97?
Wine Enthusiast.
Yeah, from Wine Enthusiast, which is one of the highest rated single malts ever. But a beautiful expression from Aberfeldy and just enhanced by those Côte Rôties. You got this wonderful ripe red fruits, lingonberries and raspberries drizzled with honey. There's a creamy note to it that I think is really, really beautiful. And it's a big, rich mouthfeel. It sits on the palate for a long time. A lot of that embellishment coming from those powerful Syrah grapes from the northern part of the Côte Rôtie, which produces some of the top quality wine for that region. So it was this pretty stunning expression. I think showed really well at our dinner.
Dude,
so nice. We had it twice.
So awesome.
Once after the core tasting, and then we had another pour for some dessert.
Yeah, those desserts were amazing. But yeah, with the whiskey, oh my gosh, it is truly magnificent whiskey.
I mean, I think it's worth noting that when we get to these whiskeys, this is really Stephanie's opportunity to showcase what can be done to that house profile of Aberfeldy through the use of different finishing barrels. And I mean, at any point in time, there's a series of different liquid of Aberfeldy that is laid down in a multitude, a series of different types of casks within Scotland, and it's understanding how they interact. Because what you're looking for in a finish is not something that's going to overpower that house style. You're looking for something to nuance.
Yeah, enhance.
In the words of Scott, and I love the word that Scott uses for this, embellish. It's a case of adding additional flavor components that you're not going to find during initial maturation. And this is really where Stephanie comes into her own in displaying that mastery of understanding what casks can do to that Aberfeldy distillate. And that carries through the range. So when we talk about this 18-year-old here, this is what we call a limited edition series. So this will normally be a larger allocation or a larger production run of bottles, usually applying a finish. The last three have specifically been French red wine casks. But as we move into this year, we're actually moving out of France, and it's going to be a Tuscan cask finish. Aberfeldy 18-year-old. So it's staying within that wine cask finishing, but it's moving into something else. And it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of additional nuance those casks can bring to Aberfeldy. And then when we get to stuff like this, such as the 24 and the 18, this is what we call our exceptional cask series. So this might be maybe 1 to potentially 3 casks that have been identified as being exceptional quality that will then be usually laid down to rest again in some additional finishing material. But we're not talking months here. We're potentially talking years. And we'll get more into this when we talk to the 24. Yeah. And then depending on the year of the release and the release itself, there may also be a relatively significant bump in ABV as well, depending on how Stephanie feels that would best represent the liquid that she is looking to release at that age statement under that guise. But I mean, that's really what this stuff comes in. So when you see these things, this is not going to be around for long. It can be a few hundred bottles to a few thousand, but this is the stuff that you want to pick up. And I mean, like I said, these are exceptional because this is so personal to Stephanie in terms of understanding, that bottle's going to kill me, how she can develop the flavor profile of Aberfeldy with finishing casks.
They went from the ground.
Donald, I don't know, what's the going rate between Canadian dollars and US dollars?
Like 30% off, let's put it that way.
Yeah, 1,500 Canadian dollars for Kergeliki 33. Send me one.
The answer is yes. Oh, yes. We should definitely get that. That sounds like a really good deal.
Polish scotches. Yeah, living in Poland, we have an unusual scotches in many different finishes. We have some hidden gems.
I'll bet you do.
I'd be very interested to try some of that.
Yeah, that's. Hope when you come back to the States at some point in time, we can share some stuff. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. To try some Polish finishes you guys get that we don't get here. Should be quite fun and unique. It's always interesting what other markets get that you don't get because for whatever reason, that's all the marketing people's decision where things go, obviously.
It's interesting. I mean, but
it's very complicated.
Global tastes change.
Yeah, it's vastly different.
So what might work in one region of the world might not necessarily work in another.
Absolutely.
And then a huge part of it as well is the distilleries only have the ability to produce a certain amount of liquid.
Yeah,
sure too.
And so you've got to have a look at what casks or quality casks are available, what works with the distillate that you have, especially when we're looking at single malt whiskey and outside.
Absolutely.
Active malt or blends,
right?
And then understand the distribution. What's the growth in a market look like? What's the projected growth in a market look like? Right. Do they have any particular preferences? I mean, these are all things that I have an understanding of from like 100 paces away.
Right.
But when you speak to Stephanie and the team and you understand how they look at these things and then understand the development of these flavor profiles, it suddenly becomes very, very interesting.
Absolutely. It was
very
impressive.
Interesting indeed. I mean, a huge part of the job that Stephanie and her team have is working with global markets to look at forecasting on what the future demand for liquid is and understanding what to put down in what wood and then how they manage the whole of that process. It's absolutely fascinating.
I mean, they literally they almost literally work in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you do. It's like you have to see what's whiskey going to, whether it's a 15 or 18, whatever. What's whiskey going to be that many years later? I mean, it's a hard.
It blows my mind.
Yeah,
it blows my mind. Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that Stephanie is laying down whiskeys she may never taste. That it's crazy to me. I mean, I like to describe opening these bottles as not just opening bottles of scotch, but like opening a time capsule.
Yeah,
I mean, you're connected to people through space and time, and when you open a 12-year-old bottle, I mean, when this was, laid down in casks, so, can you remember what you were doing that long ago? I sure can't, not to the degree of detail. So, I mean, there's something about carrying on that legacy too of all the hands that have touched this liquid and this juice and all the people that have worked so hard to get it to where it is. And you open this bottle and you share it with somebody else, you become a part of that legacy. And there's something that's romantic about that, but quite beautiful to me. So I always try and keep that in mind.
Right, I think we got one more to go.
I think so.
Yes.
What a way to finish, right?
One I'm very excited about. And then we'll talk about the things we said we saved to the end. We got those cool things to talk about for this 24.
Boy, an hour goes by quite quickly, doesn't it?
It has already been though. Yeah, which is no big deal. It's whatever. smells amazing.
So, I mean, this stuff here is pretty special. So this is part of the Exceptional Cask series. So this 24-year-old here, it was two 16-year-old refill sherry butts that were identified by Stephanie and her team as being effectively of exceptional quality in the warehouse.
Okay.
So before they hit that 16-year-old age statement, they were identified previously, but then monitored in terms of understanding the development of those casks.
Okay.
At 16 years old, Stephanie was like, okay, these are incredible. So she then basically batted, which is marrying those two casks together, and then returned it to first fill Oloroso sherry for a further 8 years.
Wow.
So it sounds crazy, right? I mean, there is no legal time limit for finishing. So, I mean, you could call it secondary maturation. You could call it finishing.
Sure.
Doesn't matter what you want to call it. Initial maturation, 16 years refill sherry, then 8 years in first fill Oloroso sherry. And then we have this, which is this exceptional cask, 24-year-old Aberfeldy, 100% maturated and finished in a combination of refill and first fill sherry. And then this is what we have in this bottle here. And this is from two casks that were identified out of the God knows how many casks that we have.
Yeah,
tens of
within our
thousands.
aging warehouse.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands probably for Aberfeldy, if not more.
Oh, wow.
And I mean,
so good.
this is what we have here, and it's some pretty exceptional stuff.
Wow. The mouth on thing's amazing. What's this? Is it 43 on
It's
this one?
43.
Yeah.
It's 43.
That's amazing what you guys can do at 43. There are very few distillers I find at 43 that can do this. They just can't. The mouth is just not that great. 43 is just magical, velvety, that honeyed mouthfeel that's you guys' house style. It's just awesome. I just love this stuff.
I mean, luckily for us, we have someone who is absolutely at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah,
Not
You're
just
right.
the world of Scotland, but I mean the global.
And that's a good point because plenty of other distillers, they don't have the skills she has. I mean, it takes completely madman skills to do things like that.
I mean, again, it's worth noting. I mean, Dewar's as a company has been around since 1846. It's 175 years.
Might know what they're doing.
Stephanie is the 7th master blender. It started with A.J. Cameron.
Amazing.
So that's 7 people
That's not many.
responsible for the production of this whiskey in a time span of 175 years. I mean, this is a legacy that's handed down. Each master blender effectively trained an apprentice under the master blender before. And that house style, those secrets to unlocking the flavor that exists in that new make spirit that comes off the stills has been studied and learned from one person to another. I mean, it's an absolutely identifiable legacy. And I mean, Stephanie is at the helm now, but I mean, she has that cumulative experience that has been passed down.
Who did she learn from?
It was Tom Aiken.
Okay.
Tom Aiken was the master blender before Stephanie came in. And she basically worked alongside and under before she then took the reins over as master blender. So when you think about that legacy and that skill set that exists, I mean, it's no real surprise.
No.
But still, the raw talent and ability it takes to put whiskeys like this together and then be recognized for it, most importantly, as well, is something that really is quite exceptional. I'm glad you enjoy it. What do you think?
I think it's fabulous. Yeah, because this is the one I couldn't get, and thankfully Scott was able to procure a bottle. Thank God, because it's like this is the one I wanted to try so badly. Was this one?
It was hard to get. There was not many that arrived in Texas. So, but yeah, it's fantastic.
Wow.
Well, today sucked, lads.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it's really not a bad Thursday lunchtime. I was about to say Thursday lunchtime.
Who knows what day it is? I don't even know.
I mean, days are kind of relative at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a bit like months. You've got a rough idea of where you are, but it doesn't really matter.
Did you want to talk about the 21, the brand new one that's out? Just to give people an idea of something to look for.
So, I mean, again, it's a limited release. So this is a 21-year-old Aberfeldy that has been finished in
Saint Emilion
barrels. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I didn't even get this whiskey in New York. So I've had a taste, and it came from someone else from a different market. Did you have it in Texas?
Yeah, we didn't have it in. I mean, it was only a total wine release for the concierge program. The ambassador team was sent a sample bottle graciously by our brand director. It's fantastic. I mean, there's
Cool new box.
yeah, there's a tanginess to it that comes from like really ripe peaches that I think is really beautiful that I get, and hints of like rose petal, definitely honeyed peaches though, and a little bit of that creamy mouthfeel that we've talked about, like with the Koro tea. It's a beautiful expression. It's a lot more floral than some of the other wine cask finishes, but really, really stunning stuff. Might be pouring.
I think he might want to have some. Just
Yeah, it's
one.
quite beautiful. Yeah, color's beautiful too. It's a sort of slightly reddish hue to it. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Matt said, it pays to be part of some of those exclusive programs.
And you got to check your email, because if you don't, because I was on vacation when the 24 got released, and that's why I don't have a bottle. It displeased me. Check your email on vacation for that. It's always very important.
It's $1 million coming to New Jersey. Yeah, if it did arrive in your city, it's probably
It
probably went quickly.
Now.
Yeah.
It would have been there. But Sugar Kitty, we can find out if there's any still there, and roughly where it is in terms of retail, because it would have been a very small amount of retailers on the independent side that would have had the opportunity to bring this on, because it was such a limited quantity of bottles.
Yeah, this has got a lot of like stone fruit up front, and then this like kind of atmospheric explosion of like marzipan on the back end, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's like
good.
biting into like a Bartlett pear, I think would be the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's that whole crispy, the whole juice is coming in your mouth from the pear. It's just, that's a really beautiful nose.
Mentioned New York multiple times now. Where in New York? Also, don't think Total Wine New York has a concierge program. Yeah, I don't know if we can really speak to that. I don't know the inner workings of Total Wine and where their concierge program is located, if it's national or not. As far as the locations go, where you might be able to find it, we could have a look. It's not something we could say right now. It may turn up nothing. It's just a matter of checking. Sometimes those numbers are hard to source.
Pick where to pick up from, and if it's available at that, whatever store you are first, or you might have to drive a ways to get to them. But if it's a reasonable drive, it would be worth your time to do it. It's the best thing Total Wine does is the concierge services.
It's worth picking up if you get it, though. If you can get that $1 million.
Ben, I live in Brooklyn, so my home market is New York, but I spend the majority of my time traveling around my North American markets, working with my ambassadors. So that's normally where I have the greatest optics, just because, that's where I live, and ultimately that's where I drink on weekends. That's where friends and colleagues are. So based in Brooklyn, but get all around Metro New York. Don't really head too much upstate or further afield. And then aside from that, I'm hanging out with Scott in Dallas, or the rest of the guys in the markets that they're working in as well.
And I'm in Texas. So
Suffolk.
based out of
Okay.
Dallas.
Very cool.
No, she's in Long Island.
Yeah. Was out there at Jackson's recently doing a charity dinner for first responders.
Brooklyn is a weird whiskey place.
Not going to lie.
Brooklyn is weird, wrong. Full stop.
Brooklyn is not weird. It's where all the cool kids live.
All right. You want to talk about the new comings and goings there of the Kregeliki?
Yeah, I think we promised we'd mention that. So, like Gareth mentioned, the 23 is going to be kind of rotated out of availability. Hopefully not gone forever, but just for the North American market. And we're keeping the 13-year and the 17-year coming back into stock, but we have a really exciting innovation from Stephanie and her team. It's a 13-year-old Kregeliki that's Armagnac cask finish. So I believe it was 12. It's a 12-year-old Kregeliki maturation that's finished up to just over a year in Armagnac casks. And it's a beautiful expression of Kregeliki. Still has that kind of muscular quality of Kregeliki, but the fruit comes forward in a really beautiful way. And if I'm not mistaken, someone might correct me, but it's the only single malt whiskey finished in Armagnac casks on the market when it releases. So it's something that's truly, truly special, and should be launching in the United States in mid to late August, I believe.
Next month.
Yeah. Well, we're going to showcase it at Tales of the Cocktail. So if you happen to be in New Orleans, try and locate us, and we'll maybe be able to pour you a dram.
There you go. It's a good plan. All right. Is there anything else we want to say? We pretty much good.
Scott, anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you for taking the time and having us over at your home, and
thanks guys for coming over.
letting us drink some whiskey and letting us talk about all this beautiful single malt Scotch that we have the pleasure of drinking.
Yeah, it really has been enjoyable.
Always.
And also getting to admire your absolutely just mind-bogglingly massive bottle collection that exists in this
When we
place.
tell them the story that, hey, you're going to come to all this stuff here, well, people don't really know what they're walking into, and then they come in like, holy shit, this is ridiculous.
There's one set path through this house, and you have to follow it, and you are aligned by bourbon, whiskey, and Scotch, and all sorts of bottles everywhere.
It tells the story of whiskey and actually alcohol as you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could almost have guided tours through this place, and you could cover pretty much the history of humanity aligned with, the development of drinking at the same time. It really is an impressive collection, bro. It's unbelievable. But thank you so much for having us down.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys all back again on Monday. So.
Cheers.
We're going back to the computer. I can't reach the mouse. It fell over. And I'm too short to grab it. So cheers, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.
Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed this fun afternoon stream.